So welcome, our brilliant colleague, Robin. We so appreciate your consistent leadership, solidarity, and commitment to community developments. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Robin, can you please share a bit about your remarkable work with our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, well, first of all, talking about the land that we live and work on and play in. I am on Algonquin territory, and in my everyday life, I want to honor the stewardship that those Indigenous peoples have given to that land and made it possible for me to benefit so richly from their stewardship. And if I can learn something from that and apply that in my own life, I think that's important as a settler to do. And I had been on vacation. I just recently came back from Hawaii, where there is a very different and interesting story about the Indigenous peoples of Hawaii. And although I didn't feel as if I connected and learned as much as I possibly could, it always astonishes me how these stories of settlers, as I am, and colonization have impacted these peoples, and you can't walk away with a sense of the importance of perspective, the importance of learning, the importance of, as you say, like only being here because others have got us here. I think my own settler ancestors had courage. They did do courageous things. And there is a part of that courage that I want to reapply in a different context. When I think about community, when I think about how I can learn from a broader set of examples, a broader set of ways of doing things. And that if it is not an ambition of my life to somehow find, I think it can't be an ambition because there's never an end. This never ends. We are always listening, we are always taking, and we are always reflecting back. And the day we stop doing that, for me, would be a sad day. So it's not an ambition, it is just a way of being and a way of learning how to be. Something I've learned, taken me a long time to learn. That's a decades of getting to that stage. And friends, people like you, hearing people like you that make that possible for me. So my gratitude for everything you've done, Victor. From the moment we met, you've blown me away at every discussion, every meeting. So just to put this in context. Okay, so for the last 5 years, I have been working on the Investment Readiness Program. Started that early in the stages of the design and the development and sort of the creation of that program. I've been honored to be supported through my government environment to be able to create something that I actually believe did some really good work. And I think it did its really good work because of its flexibility, because of its adaptability, and because of the way that we structured its own internal list. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I got to that stage because, or I think that was made possible for me because I've spent most of my time outside of government in my multiple decades of career. About a decade of that working in the private sector, a decade working more specifically for the nonprofit sector, and then about a decade in government. And along the line, got more interested in social policy, coming from an economics background, got more interested in social innovation, and the social innovation world is kind of where I find myself most comfortable and have learned an awful lot from people who have trained me, and colleagues and peers that I have benefited from, some of whom are on your website, that their experiences and our experience at the Banff residency in social innovation has fed my capacities to be able to do this work. So I'm very appreciative of that, and that is the concentration of my work these days.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate all the context and your consistent leadership. So my next question is, what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
Yeah, actually a bit of both. I like it when you phrase the question because there are things that inspire and make me curious, and they align perfectly with the things that keep me up at night. So I guess that's a good thing. But I think what inspires me generally is, as I mentioned, like social innovation generally, as it applies to systems change and thinking at the systems wide level. Much as I try to like narrow my scope, I can't help but think about what is the context, what is the system, what are we looking for to change? Because usually when you see multiple barriers or multiple gaps, there's going to be a system that is having an influence on that. And whether it's sort of micro, macro, meso layer, there's something happening in the background that is worth exploring. And I get inspired by exploring what's the next, what's the other thing, what's going on there. So the design thinking, it's been a privilege. One of the advantages of being in the federal government, much as there are disadvantages of being in a bureaucracy, the advantage is being able to think about this across Canada, because there's so much that we can learn from each other and understand barriers in different situations and sort of different perspectives. That's very helpful. And ultimately thinking about the journey of a social purpose organization, the journey of a social enterprise, how they develop, grow, and help to create social impact in this country. Those kind of things inspire me. And
Indeed. I think we're on the same page there completely. So my next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
yeah, so talking about sort of my team at Employment and Social Development Canada, as say, we've been focused on the investor readiness program for the past number of years. And we've learned an awful lot, both in our own way of doing things, but more importantly, learning from our partners that are actually doing the work out there in this landscape, this system that I described. So a number of little sort of like words come to mind, and I jotted them down. There are things like, in the challenges and barriers are both the opportunities and the challenges. In order to create this kind of cross-Canada system, it requires a lot of collaboration, and collaboration of a multitude of different people, different organizations, which means different perspectives, which means different purpose. So as you try to coordinate and collaborate with purpose, there's no point collaborating except toward a shared goal. You can't collaborate for the sake of collaborating. You know, synthesizing what is that purpose, where are we all headed, while at the same time being aware that everybody comes to the table with something different. And it has to be inclusive, which means to me adaptation, capacity for reflection, capacity for listening, capacity for leadership while stepping aside. You know, you're driving towards something while you are only ever acting alongside. So there's this constant sort of balance between these two dynamics that are always going on in this space. And whenever I've done sort of analysis of like my approach to things, words like compassion and achievement keep coming up. And I feel really like I feel okay about that. Sometimes you read these things and go, that doesn't describe me at all. But this combination of compassion and achievement, where your achievement has to be countered by your compassion, and your compassion cannot stand still because achievement is necessary. So the team that I work with, I think we've been working together for a long time, which is a huge advantage and a lovely opportunity to work in a government setting with a team that's been so consistent. Definitely share these kind of approaches. So that's been really, really nice. So we've worked a lot on our own listening, on our own sensing, while still having to be action oriented. Those are the challenges and barriers. Yeah. Thinking about this, one of the reasons that it's hard is because the results are intangible. You and I feel it. Like we know it's there. But it's still somewhat intangible. All those words that I use, they are intangible. And so when we talk about the importance of things like ecosystem, when we talk about the importance of spending time collaborating, spending time doing this kind of, which, you know, our time is valuable, it costs money. And it seems to be really hard to explain that in a way that people get it, value it, and want to expend the resources to continue to make sure that it happens.
Thank you. Such richness in those words and the sentiments, especially if you're in the work and you understand all the things that are done to make things happen. So once again, I really appreciate all the systems change and system transformation work, but also just that steady commitment to community developments and figuring out how to best serve. That servant leadership framework. So once again, I applaud you as always. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I alluded to some of those key priorities in that, you know, as you know from the budget announcement, the IRP has not been renewed. The work carries on. Like there are an awful lot of organizations that are carrying on this work, but having some funding from somewhere is important. And I think my biggest challenge and the challenge of our team is how do you keep the momentum going? How do we inspire or encourage or enable the system to keep changing? There's been so much that has happened in the last 5 years. The world really has changed to a large extent in this system area. And I hope that, you know, social purpose organizations feel that their life has been made easier, feel as if there's more potential for them to grow in certain directions, enterprising towards investment readiness or social innovation, procurement, etc. But that challenge of keeping the momentum going, it's not always about money, but sometimes it is. And so the really key priority is how do we keep going? Who keeps going? What are going to be the essential elements of keeping this going?
Thank you. Really helpful. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Okay, this was the one I had the hardest problem because I don't relate. It's like, whoa, there's some big questions. This is like a ginormous question. So I don't like ultimate goal could be that, you know, as I say, I worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, and the struggles and the challenges, it's not that I have an ambition to solve all the problems because they are myriad and they're under different categories, but at least an enterprising social purpose organization or a nonprofit that wants to see themselves in that way ought to be enabled and encouraged and feel as if they know where to go in order to get to their own next stage. We do that for businesses without hesitation. There are gaps and there are challenges. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I would love to see these two worlds collide a bit. Like collide in that we should be comfortable with having a social impact while being enterprise. It's an innovative way. It's a way of putting different things together and meshing them up. It's a way of adding new perspectives. And I value that. I think that matters in some circumstances for some organizations, for those that feel that that's going to help them. And I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it through social groups organizations that have been funded by IRP, Black-led, Indigenous-led, rural, remote, downtown Toronto, whatever. Like those that feel as if that's going to work for them should be enabled and encouraged. And I would just want to know that their life has been made easier. I would want to know that it's been made more possible. And that leads to like true social impact across Canada. That leads to the future of where we collectively can get to next.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Beautiful vision. So my last question, and I just really appreciate your time and and all the actionable insights that you shared. My last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
I think closing thoughts are probably related to knowing that capacity to have that encouragement and that enabling environment to build that ecosystem. As I said, money matters, but it's not the only thing. And so while or in the absence of like a dedicated program that has moved us this way, that's federal government funded, let's look for where else there are resources, where else there are assets. I think we started to see that among organizations, and I just hope that there is that continuing momentum about looking for, like, taking an assets-based approach and saying, we have this, we can do this, but it's driving toward wanting that change to happen, that change where enterprising is a good thing in nonprofits for those that it suits, for those where it works.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Madasi Papa, thank you so much, Robin, for your incredible leadership, your solidarity, the remarkable authenticity that you bring to this work, and the fact that you're always there listening, participating, observing, interacting, engaging, building. And yeah, momentum will not be lost. There's too much great work that came out of the investment readiness program, too much great work that came from your team. And yeah, I definitely think that we're moving from a place of strength to strength. So once again, I just applaud all the things that you mean to the ecosystem and all the work that you've been doing in social innovation and social impact for such a long time. So once again, I give thanks. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor. You are an inspiration every time I talk to you, and when I see your work, a constant inspiration. That definitely feeds my own spirit and my own soul to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, fam. And as always at Setsi, we close where we began, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you, Victor.